Luke up there?
Just now. I mean, we don't have one, we're doing one.
Okay, so we'll get the order of who we should do. Besides Mr. Mortel, is there public comment?
For public comment, Gina Castro, if you want to do a public comment, please unmute yourself. No, so that was the only person, if we want to continue in person.
And here's the, well,
Okay, sorry.
Mortel? Yeah.
Well, not a full room. My name is Jack Mortel. I'm a lifelong Evanston resident, retired fire captain. I've been elected, well, first, good evening, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the committee. I'm elected to my second term of the Fire Pension Board. I have a fiduciary responsibility, which I take very seriously. And this month, I start my 70th year in Evanston. It's, I think, kind of an accomplishment. I think I've spent 70 years here. I first want to talk about the 5th Ward Center. They printed that off today. I was looking at it last night on the website and had a really pretty comprehensive survey in there. A bunch of different categories and stuff. And it was nice. They had like 4 or 5 choices you could make. And what's your first choice and second choice? So I just want to, I know I'm too late for the survey, but I'd say my first and second choice is option 1. The minimal impact to the city of Evanston, cost impact. I just want to put that out there. I like to talk about tax relief. And I don't know what happened to the survey. I don't know how something like that disappears overnight, but
Not there anymore?
I'm gonna print this off and brought it. It was there yesterday.
I had in the packet the summary of results, but I think the survey is closed. I don't think you can.
No, it was clear that it was closed, but you had the results and you had percentages and. Groups.
It was in the packet that was
So
attached.
why did it come off the website?
I have no control over that.
Can you put it back up?
It's in the packet. The packet's on the website.
Okay, I'll go to.
Oh, it's in the website?
The packet.
It's in the city
All
council
right,
packet.
Okay, so I would want Mr. Mortel, right, give his comment.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Is it accessible to the public or
No.
just the
The packet's open to everybody. Yeah.
okay.
So maybe I opened the wrong thing. Anyway, all right. The other thing was, I want to talk a little bit about, funding the, 1% of the pension. And I think there's some misconceptions, some things are misconstrued. I think it starts right with, almost at the very opening of the budget. They have fund descriptions, and they go through every fund. But when they get to the pension trust funds, they talk about how they're funded, and they talk about resources are contributed by sworn fire members at a fixed rate mandated by state statute. That's true. But then it has by the city through an annual property tax levy as determined by an independent actuary. That's only partially true. In fact, it gives you the impression that's the only way you can fund it, and that creates the boogeyman. Oh, you're going to raise, you're going to fund it 100%. You're going to raise property taxes. And that moves everyone off of it. So in fact, I went to back to the Blue Ribbon Committee from 2008. The city put this together to take a real hard look at why the pension grew from a debt of 45 million, I think, in a few years to 145. And they took a hard look at that. And sometimes it pays to go back and see what this and this. And then they talk in here, similarly, fully funded plans ensure that the city and its citizens do not have cause for concern about disruptive scrambles to fund or finance its pension obligations in the years ahead. This was the Blue Ribbon Committee that we were ignoring, the 90%. Also, thank God that we've gone to 100% now, we're seeing the light. But also, what should be done to fix the problem? I didn't write this. This is Blue Ribbon Committee. They give 5 ways to do this without raising taxes. And they say, the committee strongly recommends that property tax increases should only be considered as a last resort. And that this is always painted as a boogeyman that demonizes the pension. And I'm going to keep bringing this up and undemonize this. It's one of the most fiscally responsible things that we can do in this city is to fund these pensions at 100% and not keep kicking this can down the road. And I thank the council for seeing a light on this in December. Then I want to go to PPRT because that's one great way I'm trying to do this as fast as I can. And PPRT, by our friend the Illinois Municipal League, they make it quite clear. It's designed as a revenue source for pension obligations and paying outstanding debt. There is an otherwise, but that otherwise is huge. It doesn't say and or, it says otherwise. That's where the money should go first. So I dug back, now through the city.
Let me give you another minute or so. Let me give it.
Okay. I dug back through the city. I copied down all theirs. I double checked on there's a website. There's 6,000 entries. We have one of those entries on this thing. And there's no PPRT fire, it's just PPRT, okay? And so, almost wrapping it up, since 2016 through 2022, we took in $15.8 million in PPRT. It's I can give you the sheet. It's $15,788,196. And pension PPRT they've only put $4 million towards that. So that's 11.
The city.
The city,
Although it's quite-
yeah, they make that decision to direct it someplace else. That means.
Sorry, say that number again?
Both those numbers.
Of that, 15.8 and 15.
I'll give it to you.
Most of it's going, I assume, to the general. 4 point.
How much was it?
$4,435,000 went to what they call pension PPRT, but there's nothing, the state doesn't say pension, they said PPRT. And so there's $11.5 million that just goes into the general fund, and in my point of view, why do we have such healthy reserves? Because it's that PPRT. If we didn't have that $11.5 million extra, what would they be? Flip it on its head. Let's see, we weren't getting PPRT. Where would that $11.5 million gone? It should be going to the pensions, and that's I'll just thank you for your time. I'll be happy to send you all these figures, and I'll tell you what, again, there's month by month, there's 6,000 entries, and it's 134 pages, and one line is buried there for Evanston, but it is in there. And that's where I got all these figures from.
So we'll talk a little bit about pensions later on our work plan.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Certainly not opposed to whatever sources of revenue there are to meet the obligation.
That's good to hear.
Other than back tax.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Mary Rosinski. Thank you, Jack. That was really helpful, and I think we do need continued financing because this is like a bad credit card debt. But I'm actually here to talk about something I heard at the meeting last night regarding the fifth ward school. And as a taxpayer, I'm extremely upset that this is being somehow or other put on a fast track for a community center that could cost $30 to $50 million to all of our taxpayers, and we haven't even so much as discussed it. And I'm not speaking for the Parks and Board rep. I'm just saying that as a discussion item, it has not been a discussion item at Parks and Rec. So when we talk about a community center and what we need, I can't imagine that we would begin talking these numbers just because we're home rule. We should not be moving forward on a project this big. And you guys are the Finance and Budget Committee. No other community on the North Shore would even contemplate discussing this without a cry from the entire community. This is not one community center for one area. This is money that's going to be spent. There is talk, and there was talk in our update to update Fleetwood Jourdain. And there is a capital improvement program that does not include a new Fleetwood Jourdain. And just because the school district wants to build a school, which is fine and great, it's not supposedly going to cost anything, doesn't mean that the city taxpayers should be given a bill for $30 to $54 million for a community center that we don't need. We don't even know what we need at this point. So I just really want you as a budget committee to say, pull in the reins on this, slow this down, involve this entire community. Home rule does not mean just go spend money. More important, I brought in, some point there's a misconception at the city council. Someone said this has been discussed. That's partially right. I brought it the last meeting. It is never there for discussion. It is an update from staff, and on our Parks and Rec project list for the entire last year. It's never been on there for a new Parks and Rec community meeting, and it's not on this $23 million capital improvement budget. So this needs to be looked at. And also, I was concerned that the survey wasn't up that long. Second of all, the proposals, if you had someone winning $1 billion lottery that wants to tie it, maybe we have a different discussion. But there's nothing out there about the city, or not the city, but the school district putting underground parking in. I know they cost money, but if we want green space, then we can put that underground. We could talk about collaborating with either the city or Family Focus about building a two-story structure. We don't need to take away Gilbert Park and possibly put it there where there's no green space next to there if you take it away from that. And then the school district can work with it. We just need to come up with a different plan to work with the school district if we want to. So I thought there's more than 4 options. And
Thank you. All right.
they're more upset about it.
Thank you for your comments.
Survey is up in the packet, I double checked. So I apologize for it. Survey.
It's in our packet.
Yeah, it's in your packet.
All right, I think we can take it roll now, which will happen we will have a quorum. So call the meeting to formally.
Public comment or without?
That was just public comment.
Councilmember Wynn,
Yes.
Oh, she's here.
Councilmember Burns,
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Newsma,
Yeah.
Councilmember Reed. On. Chair Livingston.
Here.
Committee Member McMillan.
Here.
Committee Member Ricketts. She did say she wasn't going to be here today, so.
So that constitutes a quorum. Okay, so we are officially,
We do have a number of people who have joined now on public comment, or joined online as well since we started.
for public comment?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. So let's continue the public comment now.
Deborah Jesser, would you like to unmute yourself for public comment? Trisha Connolly, would you like to unmute yourself for public comment?
Hello. I would just reiterate what Mary had said and also Jack Mortel. Those are two really high priority, pricey things that we need to be aware of and work in the right direction with. It is really unsustainable to consider another community center right now and feel that we need to be pressured and pushed into something because another entity feels they need to get going on their project. I mean, that's just not something to do to the community, and it's not fiscally responsible. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
No, sir.
Okay. So any more public comment? Okay, thank you everyone for your comments. So we consider your view. So approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes that were circulated?
No comments, I will move to approve the minutes.
All right, vote.
Councilmember Wynn,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma,
Aye.
Chair Livingston,
Aye.
Committee Member McMillan.
Aye.
Very good. Okay. All right. So I guess the next item on our agenda then is to go over the Fifth Ward School and Fleetwood Jourdain discussion.
Yeah, I just have a presentation from last night. Hello, all. My name is Laura Biggs. I'm the city engineer for the city of Evanston. And Clayton asked me here to do a brief update about the Fifth Ward School project that the city has been working with the school district on. So I'll just do a really quick history. Last spring, the school district District 65 determined they would build a new elementary and middle school at the Foster Field site. They own that property and have been leasing it to the city in a long-term lease, but that lease is expired. And they've informed us that they're going to take that property and build a school. That property, which is Foster Field, provides a significant green space to the community and also is critical to programming that's offered at Family Focus and at the city's Fleetwood Jourdain Community Center. The city does quite a lot of critical programming for the population that is served by Fleetwood Jourdain that involves childcare, both after-school programs and summer camps, as well as various enrichment programs for children. Without that green space, it really impacts the ability of Fleetwood Jourdain to provide the same type of childcare programming that they provide currently. And so the city began working with the school district to try to determine what the possibilities were for providing a more coordinated project and improvements in order to preserve, to determine if it's possible to preserve a green space. And to that end, on August 8th, the City Council voted to engage a separate contract with the school district's architect, QUORUM Clark, that they've been working with to investigate this issue. So the city has their own contract with QUORUM Clark and entered into a memorandum of understanding with the school district to work on determining what synergies could be had. So since then, which has really only been about 4 months, that is a very short time in the capital program world. So we've been working with the school district to, actually Family Focus, we've engaged quite a bit as well to determine what are the options. Are there synergies? Can we figure out a way to move forward on the site while maintaining a green space? And the initial thing is that we looked a lot at how we could share facilities, things like gyms. That was not actually very well received once we started looking at it in detail. Through all of the organizations need a lot of these critical facilities at the same exact time. We looked at sharing a commercial kitchen, which a school needs to have, at Fleetwood Jourdain uses for delivering community meal programs. And what we found is we needed at the exact same time as each other. So as we were going through all of these big ticket items in the building, what we were finding is we need them all at the same time. The school needs a gym for after school programs. We need a gym for after school programs. Family Focus also needs a gym at the same time. So it became a struggle to figure out how to share space that's interior to the building. There are options or opportunities to share space on the site because a green space or a field or tennis courts or basketball courts, it does turn out that we actually do need these things at different times. We need them much more heavily during the weekends in the summer. That's not typically the time that the school district is using those facilities. So there we think there's, things like parking, there is some synergy that can happen on the site. We did work with the school district and the QUORUM Clark to develop kind of 4 options about how you could maintain a green space on the site. And to that, we can move to the next slide. Option 1, or actually this first slide shows the property allocation for the general site. And on this slide, north is to the right. That is Simpson Street, which is the north border of the property. The purple area is Family Focus property, is actually owned by Family Focus. They have the old Foster School building, parking lot, and a playground that is currently used jointly by Family Focus and Fleetwood Jourdain. The bluish, greenish.
Laura, originally the entire property was owned by D65 before they
Yes.
owned Foster School.
Originally a long time ago, but I think it got divvied up around the 50s. And Fleetwood Jourdain was built in 1954 as part of, if I remember correctly, as part of the divvying up of the property was to provide a school. District 65 didn't really, they always maintained Foster Field as their green space and ultimately leased it back to the city to be a park. which is where Foster Field is, yeah. The mint green bluish area is City of Evanston property. That's where Fleetwood Jourdain is contained. The yellowish area is District 65 property, which contains Foster Field, and then kind of at the southwest or southeast corner of the site, which is the bottom left corner, there are some basketball courts and tennis courts, which are owned by the City of Evanston, but are on District 65 property. So it's fairly murky how this all plays out. Next.
Do we have a lease or an easement or something in writing that gives us permission to?
We did. We had a lease, and then we had to notify the district of any improvements, and they had to agree to them. That was done, but in all fairness, I don't think they ever made a commitment that they would never take the property back.
So they're in effect canceling their lease.
They canceled the lease. It expired in May. No, it expired in February, I think. Next slide.
In preparation for construction, I just want to give that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once they made the decision to move forward with building the school, I mean, they properly notified us that they were no longer extending the lease. And I would like to say this first option shows basically the new District 65 school in the northeast corner of the site on Foster Field where it currently exists, which is entirely on the school District 65 property. And it shows Fleetwood Jourdain and Family Focus pretty much as they are now. So this site plan is what the school district initially proposed to the city. And if we stop working on this today, this is what will be built. This is, the downside of this is that the green spaces are very minimal, will dramatically impact Fleetwood Jourdain and Family Focus programming for children especially, but also remove the major neighborhood park that exists in this part of the city. And the green spaces that are shown, they are relatively small.
It looks like a huge portion of that power line is for parking. I mean, like a really inordinate amount of parking between 1, 2, 3.
They were directed to provide the parking they needed on their site because pretty much every school that we have with District 65 in the City of Evanston has substantial neighborhood issues due to teachers and staff parking in the neighborhood.
Right, but I'm just thinking of the other parking lots that are there too. I think that there could be or should be a little more maybe important, like this.
The other parking exists currently, the one
Right.
on the bottom right.
Right, and
exists, and that's the new one. So in this concept, this will continue to operate as the City of Evanston.
And how about up above?
And the one up above would operate as the District 65 parking lot.
The
No.
Family Focus.
The Family Focus,
That's a lot.
That's Family Focus.
yeah.
That's a huge amount of, that's a lot of money. I mean, I just feel like it seems like, have they explored some coordination
We have
with the other entities to reduce the parking to open up more green space?
We have started talking with Family Focus. We started conversations, and that may be a possibility, but Family Focus cannot move fast enough to guarantee that that parking will be available. If District 65 has to make a decision today and submit to the Land Use Commission what they want to build, they can't count on that parking.
Yeah, I know this rendering looks like nobody uses those parking spaces. It's the rendering, but people actually use those parking
Not
spaces.
familiar
So
with
this
it,
is,
it's still.
and then their plan
Family
also,
Focus ones.
yeah, they're probably at only 40% occupancy right now, and with the renovations, and even without them, they need to be 100% occupied in order to, they're running at a deficit to carrying the facility. So just like any organization that's planning for the future, they're not gonna be quick to give away parking that they'll need, seeing as how they're only at 40% occupancy right now. So
But
need some parking
they have
growing.
some major tenants coming in
Yeah.
with the living room and,
And that's
or the
not-
welcoming
conversation
center,
can't
sorry,
happen,
the
but
welcoming center and
I don't wanna
various
make it
other.
seem like that's how many available parking spaces they already negotiated.
It-
Some agree.
It may be possible to reduce the parking somewhat, but that decision will not occur on the timeline that the District 65 needs to get Land Use Commission approval.
And to be clear, the city has, other than zoning approval, which I have a question about, we have no control over the school district's design
No.
as city employees. And residents.
Only through the land use commission process
Yes, it's depending what you mean by
Is-
design, but.
is there really any opportunity for this. The city, if the city said, you can't build that, the school district can totally build it. The question is, can it get through the land use commission process?
No, they can proceed and build it. I mean, 'cause I wanted you to finish the presentation, but I wanted to bring something up about the amount of variances that would need to be approved.
This might be a good time for me to ask my question, is to what extent does the city have approval through the zoning process and also through the permitting process? Because if I'm not mistaken, school districts are not subject to municipal building permits.
The control the city has, and saying the city has it is a little bit of a misnomer. The control that the land use commission has is that they will need major zoning variations in order to build the building that they want to build. Now, the community has a strong desire to have a fifth ward school, and this is where the fifth ward school is going.
Yeah.
So the question is, just for the community wanting a fifth ward school, is it really politically feasible for us to stop the
So the
building
land
from
use
being built?
commission, you'll go through the land use commission, there will be variances that ultimately will come to council for approval.
My understanding is that those variances are approved by the land use commission. That they approve zoning variations,
But, and we don't have to vote on it,
and you don't have to vote on them.
because it's a school. Because normally we always
Yeah,
get
for a
everything.
plan.
Normally, stuff comes to council.
Okay, so yes, then you would be the major zoning variations. That's all they need is major zoning variations.
So that's zoning,
Yes,
but building permits, do those go through the city permit desk? Or do
No.
those go through
Well,
the regional school?
only a few. Stormwater detention goes through the city. Like if they need curb cuts, that goes through the city. But actual building permits do not go through the city.
So it's different than any other project in the city, whether it's
Yes,
public, whether
that
it's
goes through some
nonprofit,
sort of
whether it's
state board
university.
for school approval.
Public school districts are not, those limited exceptions, not subject to city building code,
Yes,
but they are subject to city zoning code.
yes. Okay, so
Thank you.
that is the default, and when
I'm
we,
trying to remember my point, but I think it's important to jump in now. I want to be clear too, though, that the student assignment committee, which I volunteered as a community member, that the working group I sat on, that recommended that the school build a school in the Fifth Ward, and that recommendation went to the District 65 board, had nothing to do about construction. Right, so the mandate they have, yes, is to build a school in the Fifth Ward. We didn't talk anything about height, density, any of that. Location really never even came
What kind
up.
of school?
What?
Kind of K through 5, K through?
K through 8, I think, was the recommendation that came out, which is what we went with. But that was about as far as it went. It didn't talk, I don't even know if location came up. It was assumed because in 2012, when folks like myself and others were kind of leading the charge to get a school in the Fifth Ward, this was the obvious location. Then it was a K through 5 school, was much smaller, like that piece on Ashland wasn't there, and so there was space. I actually don't remember where they were gonna put parking in that design, but my point being is that it was not a construction process. We didn't talk about construction, we didn't talk about location. So when you say the Fifth Ward wants a school, yeah, in concept, but there was still this work to do.
I agree.
That's what we're doing now. I just wanna be clear.
And what other areas were looked at?
This area,
No other areas were.
they don't own a lot of extra property in the Fifth Ward.
We didn't see the first concept until after the recommendation was made, after the District 65 voted on it. I think at that meeting, they revealed the first concept, which was like an H-shaped design with like a turf field above a parking lot that was gonna be in the center of the H-shape. That was the first concept that we saw. And that was revealed at the board meeting that they approved that they were gonna fund the school in the Fifth Ward.
I mean, that was interesting, but it does, like, for that space, just a ton of, like, surface park. It just seems like.
There are other options which don't have this.
But I mean, I think even that option could be maybe modified.
The school district does not have the budget to put the parking underground. So that is, I heard the comments, and that may be a possibility, but the school district also not started design, plans to break ground by September.
Since we have,
So there's a limited amount of opportunity to discuss with them a lot of
I think we
options.
keep the discussion focused on stuff within the purview of finance. and
Yeah.
budget. Let's,
Mr. Chair, I think we'll need some help understanding what that is, because that was my concern.
because we got another meeting. to get
They
to
have
at
played
5 o'clock.
their,
We got another meeting.
I have not, they don't discuss their funding or their costs with us.
So I would just say in terms of finance and budget, the underground parking, like, we're talking about, like, I think tonight you're gonna give us some numbers about investing a huge amount of money in building. So, I mean, if they pay for underground parking instead of that, I mean, so that's all finance. Like, you might say they can't afford it, but we can afford it, I mean.
Yeah, I'd
it's all
rather do
finance.
that than spend $30 million.
And have more space, so.
Well, even without the parking lot there, if we're gonna jump into the discussion, I was gonna wait until after the presentation. I don't like it called green space, it's a playfield. We lose a playfield. Green space is not a playfield. You can't play soccer, football, baseball, all the league and practice play that goes on currently will be eliminated. Like, you keep trying to dial it down, like, oh, green area. Well, we have green areas.
No,
We're
I know,
talking
I'm
about
just saying, I
playfield.
would put a field
And the
back.
playfield, if you allow her to continue, we would need like all of this
Yeah.
space to have a playfield. So even if you satisfy the parking issue, there's still no playfield.
Well, I know, so if it went under,
Right, so the
instead, then you
can
have to open
a
up that
playfield.
whole field, you got a playfield.
You talking about under with the building itself?
So, yeah, so, no, that's great, where the parking.
I mean, if you go into the other concepts, they'll have
So I'm
a,
just saying, that would be, it's just in terms of.
even if you
finance.
satisfy the parking, it's still not enough. We gotta be out of here for a playfield.
Half an
So
hour.
if you go into the other concepts,
Financial
you'll see.
question, like,
So if I could bring up one additional thing too that we mentioned before. You have concerns about their budget, or just do we have understanding of their budget and their funding? Because we don't want to make major commitments ourselves. Seems like we have a vested interest in really making sure that their project is viable and funded.
Yes,
And they should share that information, and we should, you know, if we think that, boy, to do that, it's gonna be substantially more, and they have fundamental, we're not comfortable with their budgeting and their funding, that's something we need to know, because their project has to be viable for
yeah.
us to make the decisions we need to make.
Yes, they don't really discuss their funding with us much. They've discussed their primary funding mechanism as lease certificates, and you can go read articles about that in the Roundtable and Evanston Now. But they actually don't really talk about the total cost of the building and the funding sources that they plan to use, other than the lease certificates, which will be paid for by busing. And so they've already sold the lease certificate.
Don't you have the
The amount of
leverage of the permits, and just say, you know, we
Very
see what you're
limited.
doing.
So I did
Well, we
meet
just
today
said
with the
we
chair
have
of the
no
finance
leverage
and budget of District.
What do we have left?
Zoning.
So I met with the
Okay.
chair today of the finance and budget of District 55, and he said 44 million is what they're looking at.
Yeah, they
So,
said
and
40.
we'd be happy, Joy Halper, to come here. In fact, we talked about how it was important.
And again, I think District 65 has been very, again, we're opening up for discussion, I have my notes here, but, I think it would be great if this was all one body, right? Like, we were the school, like Chicago, we were the school district and we were the city. Because then a lot of what you're saying could potentially happen. They sold a lease certificate already. Their clock started several months ago, a year ago.
It started in March,
And their
as I
biggest
could tell.
fear is that when those interest payments come up, that if they don't eliminate the amount of busing they're doing, which represents, busing out of the Fifth Ward represents about 3 to 4 million, which they're using, the savings of that, they're using that to pay the interest. If they don't stop the practice of busing Fifth Ward students out of the ward, that they're gonna have to find another place to get $3 or $4 million. Period. That's the reality.
Yeah, so I think that they ought to be showing us their finances. They're going to need zoning variances from you all.
Yeah, I mean, and we could, I just want to be clear that there are things out of our control, out of this certainly committee's control, out of the council's control, that is driving the
But
timeline.
there are things that are in your control too, and I think that that's
For sure.
something this council has never done a very good job at
But
historically.
it doesn't, Maybe we can
saying,
dictate
hey,
and
we
say you
have
can,
leverage here, and that's something we never do in this town, on many different levels, and I think that,
well, if you have some ideas, I mean, I don't know if this is the venue, bring it up, but if it is, bring it up, but I don't know if we have enough leverage to have them
well, you
tack
can just say
on,
you don't get the zoning variances, they can't build anything.
to tack on, you know, an additional whatever it is for underground parking. So my point is that, and this goes to even something that Mary said, the concepts that you see here are based on like real possibilities and areas of agreement. Like, we could put anything on the wall that's a possibility. I could come up with as many concepts as I want, but if it's not grounded in reality,
Well, why is
in
this more
agreement.
common reality than an underground parking lot? You're talking about the city now investing a ton of money, whereas the other one, you know, we're talking about underground parking, which maybe we do it jointly, we do underground parking to maintain the structure.
again, realistic, because at least those dollars are within the control of this body at least. It's a discussion this committee can have and the council can have.
I think we need to be we should be meeting with their finance and budget. I think we should schedule a meeting with Joey and their team here. I think that's really.
Yeah,
And I think
I mean, you're trying to make decisions in a vacuum.
I'm not making any
No,
decisions,
but I mean.
right? We're here discussing this.
The city's being forced to make decisions in a vacuum because you don't know everything.
We do know a lot.
We
Well,
know,
I'm talking about 42 months.
so I don't mean to be difficult, but I actually was supposed to be at another meeting and I was asked on Friday to attend this one, so I did, but I was supposed to be somewhere else. So I'd like to just
Let's continue to do that.
get through this. Okay, so this was another option that was developed that maintains the green space by building the school district building in a very similar location to where they originally proposed, moving parking partly onto the Dewey Avenue right-of-way and reconstructing Fleetwood Jourdain so it's not in the center of the site, but is off to along the street edge. It creates a green space in the middle that can be jointly shared by Family Focus, Fifth Ward School, and Fleetwood Jourdain. Once we start talking about moving Fleetwood, there is the cost of reconstructing the building. The other thing, the one thing I will say is that, to me, it hasn't really been decided entirely what that building looks like, so that these costs are order of magnitude costs. They are, I do not want to represent, like, if we do this option, we're going to spend exactly $32 to $34 million. I think there's a lot that's undecided about what we'd actually be building.
Including a pool. Like, we threw the pool out there just to show people that the number that's budgeted in the TIF district for this type of improvement is $24 million.
I'm sorry, I lived through the Crown era, it's just hard to even believe this is something you're talking about. And we all know when you throw out numbers like that, they usually double. And then we don't even know how to maintain the building. This is so frustrating to have this kind of thrown up here again. And, you know, because we don't have enough green space, we can figure out the green space.
So I would just like to say that I understand the concern of the people in this room. The city council is the one that makes the decision about the building, what we're actually doing. I'm here to provide some information to discuss financing, orders of magnitude, so that the Budget and Finance Committee can discuss recommendations to the city council and also potential avenues for financing things.
Right.
To that end, I'm just trying to give you a grounded, this is what's been discussed.
Sure. This is a committee of council, just to be clear, and ideally, this committee should be giving some direction with regard to finance to our staff, recommendation to our.
I agree that this committee should do that. I'm not trying to tell the committee what to do, but I'm trying to provide some basic information about the project.
Based on previous experiences for things that have nothing to do with this project.
You can't say that. You cannot look at that.
Look at this for what the project it is all I'm asking, right? This is a different project, right? I understand the nightmares of Robert Crown.
You have to look at your history. You have to also look at the fact that, you know, everybody's clamored for a pool with Crown. We decided not to do that. When you spend your money poorly, when you make poor decisions, it does affect the future. It does affect what you're able to do in the.
I would like to make a fully informed decision by letting Laura.
Let's continue with the other options. There is a lot to discuss, which we won't do in this meeting, but whatever. Yeah.
So, this was one option that was put forth that creates a green space and starts looking at how to manage the parking a little bit better so that it's not just taking up such a big portion of the site, it's actually partially on the city right away in this orientation. Next slide. This is pretty much a similar discussion, but just a different orientation, that this moves all the buildings to the south side of the site and puts the playfield in a similar position to where Foster Field is, although it reduces the size of the playfield by about 25 to 30%.
Is that a new community center, or is that the existing?
This would be reconstructing the community center and moving it to the south. The existing community center is more of a square shape, and it's north of that location. So it would overlap very closely to where the existing school is on the west end of the, or where the proposed school is on the west end of the proposed school. Next option. There's actually a couple ways you can lay out site plan option 4, but this looks at moving the reconstructed Fleetwood Jourdain Center off-site entirely to give the maximum green space to the site. And the school could be located in the same position as option 3, which is what's shown here, or it can be located as option 2 in the northeast corner, which actually gives a better uninterrupted green space and play area. So the option, but in this case, we actually would be required to acquire some private property in addition to Gilbert Park. And these are really high-level concepts. I really don't know we'd end up with a building exactly that shape or anything else. I mean, this is just to give people a general idea of how it could work. This option, because we have the property acquisition, is the largest cost of the option.
Approximately, what would that be? At your estimate?
Yeah, so the consultant's estimate is around $50 million.
That's about property acquisition, or you talking about the total?
That's for the
The total, what would we need?
Yeah, the property acquisition is $7 million.
And I want to be clear that swimming pool doubles the cost. So again, that was just to show the community what is possible. So ultimately, that is their decision. It's not even this body. It's the community. It's the community. So I just want to be clear that the community hasn't even said they want a swimming pool. They may say, we want some other amenities. I wanted I put a swimming pool in there, asked that to put a swimming pool there just so people could know what's possible. Because what the pool consultant said is that not just in Evanston, but regionally, there is a gap in terms of for leisure pools. Right? So that's why that's in there. But that doubles the cost. So we're looking at half the cost if we don't go with the swimming pool, which is possible. We still haven't, had that discussion with the community.
We need to do a lot more work relative to what we really think it is.
Yeah.
And I do think we should be so compartmentalized, even with the school districts with 202 and 55, I can say it's a real problem with separate districts. And this is particularly when we're looking at a common sort of site or plan, I really think we should be, I mean, one of the things that Jody and I talked about today, again, who's the chair of the Finance and Budget Committee, is that we should be working with all of our residents, our residents, whether it's 55 or it's the city, and we don't want to put too much burden and pain financially on them. We all recognize that people are suffering. Joey and I both said we don't want to see people further pushed out.
Right, and
you saw so many of our Black residents now
Right,
moving into Skokie, but that we should work together. I mean, he agreed that so that the city isn't also like, so this isn't a double whammy.
Right,
So we're together, and he talked about another option that's not up there also, which is looking at Fleetwood Jourdain and figuring that so that is like a school and community center, maybe another option to reduce the total cost.
Which we've discussed it. I appreciate your conversations with Joey, and we can have additional conversations. We've been talking with the CFO and with the superintendent of schools.
So my point is,
if we want to bring Joey in, having the same discussions, but if we want to bring Joey in and others, that's fine too. But I want to make sure you understand that the leadership of the district, we've been communicating with the leadership of the district as well as their CFO.
Clearly, there's a lot of gaps in information between the two. So I think that these conversations should go
For
forward.
sure, that's fine.
Jointly.
I just want you to understand, we've been having conversations, as Laura said earlier in the presentation, about how we can share space, let alone having one space, which I think would be difficult. But those discussions have occurred. Laura, please.
For option 1, we must have some cost even, or is there almost no cost?
The cost that for us, for option one, cost is nothing. We're not doing anything. We won't be able to offer, we won't be able to offer the city programming that we do in the 5th Ward.
Yeah, I would say with that one, I would say at least explore the possibility of sharing the cost of underground parking to open up a field.
It would not give us a play field.
I'm sorry?
That's what I keep trying to tell you. Just
So
addressing
open
the
up the
park,
play, the whole.
that would not create a play field.
Yeah, no, it would.
I just showed it
No,
to you.
I
It
know,
won't.
it would.
It certainly would in these renderings. Now, we can see if the renderings go from drawings to better renderings, if it does, but it doesn't
I'm
even
saying
on
that
these
could
renderings.
be maybe, cost.
And I'm not saying it's not important, it doesn't address the playfield. The playfield is a huge area that I think you're not really understanding how small this development site is.
Do we know the target number of kids that are gonna be?
900.
900, it looks like, yeah, it looks like a tiny amount of field for 900 kids.
You're not gonna get into.
Compared to every other
class
school
size.
now, that's their call on 65, but it just looks. So a lot to think about, but as you brought up, we need to understand their math.
We need to understand the math.
Their math, because if their project is 80 million instead of 40 million, what happens to their project?
So
Or whatever the number is.
I'm gonna throw out a hypothetical here, and I'm not in any way indicating that this decision is made, but let's say we were to move forward with reconfiguring the site and reconstructing Fleetwood Jourdain. There are site improvements that need to be made that would be jointly shared. It has to be determined how would we divide up the cost for those improvements. There are things like parking that would be jointly shared. We have to determine cost shares for those things. So we are in no way at this point saying like, they have a box of this and we have a box of this and we are paying for this and they're paying for that. Now the buildings, I think that's very clear. They're gonna pay for their building and we're gonna pay for our building. And they, worst case scenario, are gonna pay for their parking the way that they show it in option 1. But there are options for moving forward. However, any option, they've talked about putting playgrounds on roofs and play areas on top of parking decks in the past. They've been concerned about the cost of those. Those will not work for us in the summer because artificial turf fields heat up tremendously. And we actually closed the Robert Crown artificial turf field during much of this past summer because we had several heat waves.
I think more importantly, they've already moved away from that. I mean, these concepts, the H shape was what that was initially. They've already walked away from that concept of, turf field. That was the initial one where there was the H shape and then in the middle there's a turf field parking lot.
I wonder if Melissa has something to add. I just heard maybe potentially Melissa. Heard someone maybe say something? Maybe not, sorry.
I think another important thing to understand is that, and I said this in the meeting yesterday, if you look at the TIF redevelopment plan, there was money set aside to do this work. Either way, 24 million is budgeted to make improvements at Fleetwood. Initially, before I knew that this was gonna be K-8 and be as large as it was, the thought was that there would be enough for a play field. In 2012, and again, I have to look back to see where they put their parking, but it seems like they were able to preserve a play field. And so these kind of conversations started before we started seeing concepts. So my point is that if we budgeted already for 24 million, granted it was for a TIF that is still not mature, but if we budgeted that, and I believe there's support on the council to do that at some point, whether it's today or 5 years from now, once the TIF matured, why would we invest into a building that if it were anywhere else and it didn't have this historical significance attached to it, wouldn't be approved on this site? It's terrible planning to squeeze all of this stuff into this development site. And that's, Laura, what I want you to talk about, because that's what brought me back into this discussion early on. Staff was saying this would not be otherwise approved as it's being presented. It's terrible planning. It's going to cut down mature trees. It's going to take away green space. It's going to create water retention issues. Like, it's not a good plan. That's why I was really brought to the table, to see what we can work out to try to make this a better plan for the community, for the community that lives around.
Yeah, so one thing too, I know this is, the school movement right now in the country is about creating school community centers. So schools are not, they're trying to move into that concept of schools so that they are actually also community centers. So I just want to put that out there, that maybe we should explore the idea of calling them Fleetwood and building a school community center there.
Yeah, like in Colorado, you
Because
see a lot of
right now in
multi-use buildings that are schools and community centers.
Right.
Conceptually.
And that speaks to my desire to not have
Right, all this.
two
Right,
taxpayer-funded
exactly.
entities doing very similar things.
It might be something we want to look at a little bit.
I mean,
Because
we looked at it.
Friends,
We can-
educationally and community case now is not to have just an educational center and a community center, but schools are becoming that, so there's more community involvement. It's a healthier educational setting, it's a healthier, so in that case, like I said, potentially we sell or we work together to recreate the whole Fleetwood Jourdain into a school/community.
And I would
center.
imagine in most of those places, maybe I'm wrong, but even if it's not the case, it's easier when it's one unified school district. It's much easier to have those discussions. We've tried, they want what they want, right? Reasonably so, they want to use it, they want it available for their students, and the same thing is true for us. So I'm not saying it's not worth
Right, so I think we
revisiting,
should
I'm
look
just
at
saying,
that. That is the
we've looked
direction
at it.
now, is that schools are going.
Actually, skip through this.
Well, communities are going.
We got 10
that
minutes to get
route.
to another meeting.
Yeah, we
So-
know the plan.
Okay, so all I'm gonna say is, we are trying to figure out a way to separate from the District 65 schedule that they have set up, not us, and look at how to get more information out of the community to really try to look at what the community needs. And we do plan to continue working with them as we go forward. We are starting a process to negotiate the next phase of the MOU with them, and we will be working on that over the next few weeks.
And I also wanted to establish with the school district, again, they were trying, even though it's put a lot of pressure on us, them selling the lease certificates before they, started the city process. I understand it, because we all understand that they were trying to secure the best terms they could in what we always talk about, which is a really difficult environment. So they want to get in there, get good terms. Yes, it's put us on a very aggressive timeline, but I don't want to bash them. I understand what they were trying to achieve. They probably achieved it in terms of their rates, and now they're trying to stick to that schedule as best they can.
I would just say we can't let their timing
Exactly.
force us to do a bad decision. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to not build the wrong, we want, but also I want to build the right thing, not the wrong thing that's wrong from day one, right? And,
They
there's no
have-
way we're a month away from saying, this is what we think we should do.
They have
How
come
would
to
we-
the
how would we
table
possibly be there?
in delaying a schedule that they could not afford to delay, but at least so far, they've only been willing to delay it so much, and their tolerance for that is almost done. And in that 4 months, we've had like 15 meetings.
If we do
It's been a
nothing,
while.
then option one happens.
Yeah.
That's not true,
Well,
because it still has to go through approval. Again, so
yeah.
what brought me into this is that a city coming to me saying this is bad planning. We would not approve this anywhere else in the city but for the historical significance. I will fight tooth and nail to make sure we do not have bad planning and poor planning in the Fifth Ward, period. Right? And I will organize my butt off to make sure that doesn't happen, because that's what I was told by staff. That's what got me to the table in this way. So I would be at those land use commission meetings, advocating, making sure that we don't do something we wouldn't do anywhere else in the city. It's a congested site. We wouldn't allow it anywhere else. It's a crazy plan. And you know it. We gotta find another
Yeah, I
way.
would say we move to one school community center.
We gotta find another way.
And then at least space maybe
Yeah,
for
the
school too. I think you don't like have separate buildings.
And it seems like it's, if they have to start paying interest on their funding before the school is ready, that's a budget issue,
Mhm.
right? It's not, I don't know, have bonds become callable, but I don't know. right?
No,
But
I mean,
then
I think it is a
they're-
budget issue, and the question is,
Force us into a bad decision. because
do they have the
we're
ability to
like-
absorb another $3 to $4 million a year into their budget?
And they don't. None of us do.
Yeah, nobody does, but we don't wanna run full speed into a mistake.
No, I agree. I mean, this is a very difficult
Yeah.
situation. Hence why I am probably be frustrated every meeting you see me at, because it's difficult. Because I have to protect the interests of the Fifth Ward. I have to, I'm on the Finance and Budget Committee, so obviously I realize that it would be great if the TIF was mature than it is today, right? There's just realities that we're faced, but also what we do know in the survey is that there is not enough strong support to eliminate the playfield. There's some disagreement on what else it says, but it definitely does not show that there is strong support to eliminate the playfield. I would argue it's the opposite. And so it's like we're stuck. I think from talking to Laura, we're in a place where we can negotiate the next MOU that expires, I think, on the 15th with the district. I think maybe where the school board could make the most difference is on timeline. To be frank, you know?
So when
I don't
you
know
get
if
the
there's
next
anything they can do about it. They
MOU,
might agree with Dr. Horton, because again, I understand, and not just Dr. Horton, but kind of the school district as a full team. I understand why they sold the lead certificate when they did. I understand why they're trying to keep this timeline as best they can. I understand it. But if anywhere they can help, it probably is in that area.
So far in court, let's see, just have an idea.
We
how much
spent around 125,000,
on the consultant
yes.
for that, for those plans?
There were probably 12 to 15 2 to 4 hour meetings that they sat
You're seeing
through and
the
developed information
Product
and
of a
stuff
bunch of
for,
work, yeah. We went back and forth
including
with a
some
bunch.
fairly serious discussions with
So is there a
consultants.
master limit on that, or are we just?
Yes,
what is it?
200,000.
200 is the max.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much. We need to understand their math, right? What they
I
think
agree
their
that
voters
was
are gonna
great,
say.
and as we move forward with whatever, unless the city's gonna sit back and just let stuff happen, I think that there's gonna be discussions about site improvements and cost shares, and that, I think, is something that is not just done in a, in silence. That is something that I at least would love to have more guidance on, and I think it would be helpful to discuss like budget options and et cetera.
Thank you for your help.
The other thing I just want to say is that you also hear from committee members who have a fear that they'll end up as a floor on Family Focus, Fleetwood would, or a floor on a school. I'm trying to see the best way to explain this. There's, like sometimes schools, although they're public schools, they're locked a lot, right? Like they're not like, there's not this open door policy in the same way you see at rec centers.
Right,
Right.
but I mean, that would all be a joint.
It could be worked out, but
Yeah.
if there's a will for it to be worked out. But and that's the difficulty of having two separate elected bodies, right?
It's not easy.
And I would never discourage conversation. We've been having them for several months now, but I want to say that they function differently than rec centers. And so there is a real fear from both the people
Right,
that
we
work
should look
there
at other schools
and live there,
that
that we don't want to lose a rec center, not just Fleetwood, the
For
existing
sure.
building, but this kind of walk-in,
But I
this
think there has to be
is
a-
for us.
looking
This is
at
truly a
other-
public
This
walk-in
is being done
facility.
all over the country.
Right, I mean,
No, I understand. I just
It's-
want to add that it's not.
greener, it's better for the environment, we
Better
have
for the
dwindling
community.
populations, it's better for the community, I mean, there's study after study after study, I realize absolutely it's gonna be complex, because you have two separate entities, there's no doubt about it, it'll be hard.
Or,
Security issue.
No.
Right, sure.
and let them do it.
Can we look at our work plan real quick?
I did want to talk finance with this, which we really haven't, to follow up on some conversations I had with Clayton, if we have time. I mean, we can, I don't know what the plan is to
Well,
revisit this at the next meeting.
I think so, and I think, we don't have to go through this work plan, I made some changes to the work plan, I think if we're on to the next subject, if that was what you were talking about, or no? I think that it works into this overall work plan that we have.
Okay.
So if we could go, I know we have time pressure, I just put together, the budget process, I don't know what grade I'd give it, not, whatever, I mean.
Well, I think we should
ultimately
have
go
a
through.
postmortem on it.
But I believe that, sure, and I think we're under some time pressure right now, it seems like there were areas that could have been resolved before the budget process that would have been present in the original budget, that would have made the whole process go much better. And as we go into next year's budget process, if we do the work now, we could have these items resolved, or at least not open to the level of debate that happened, so they're present in the original budget, and the budget discussion can be truly on issues of trade-offs. So I think those areas, and see what other people think, are what are the capital planning priorities, which go directly to what we're talking about here, this would be the new one, would be, what the pension contribution is going to be based on the most updated information. What would be our approach with major revenue streams that can come out of forecasting information that Clayton and Tesh have started, and then also having a better systematic view of what's going on with the general fund and what we think the forecast of reserve changes would be in upcoming years. If we had all those good tools, it would have made the entire process, I think, much easier for everybody. There's probably more that we could say, but there were substantial elements of what ended up in the final budget that could have been resolved, you know.
Right, so I agree, and I hope, I mean, you know, that we can begin giving direction as early as May. But I think you and I talked about, for example, for the pension, which was a big debate, and a hugely important topic, given that it's causing a lot of financial strain on our residents. We talked about next meeting discussing, I would like to propose that we we levy at 90%. So I think we have to give explicit direction, so there's no debate on a few big items like this. And this is an obligation. This isn't like, oh, should we do this or not? This is like, we have to do this. So, I would like to next time discuss and vote and take action on levying for 90% of our obligation, and then using the full PPRT so that staff understands that the full PPRT will go to bridge that. If there is any other difference, then that would come from reserve. I suspect that that'll pretty much seal the deal on 100%. So I would like to have us consider this, to give staff that direction so that we don't, so at the end of the year, that's not an item that we're discussing.
Certainly, that's an item that we could resolve whenever, right, and make it systematic. And again, I have never been against 100%, but it's a matter of personal.
No, but it helps to address the future funding.
Right, the future funding.
The future
Right,
funding.
and so, we can expand from this, but these seem to be the major things. You know, working with Laura earlier, what are the major projects? What are we gonna do with the dog shelter? All that stuff did not have to happen in October, November.
And but I just want to add also, like, because there were also, and I've asked for full accounting of surplus, so if I can get those in. And I think that, you know, and I have to say, Clayton, maybe you can explain, like, for example, you know, I looked at the biggest numbers where we were way under budget regularly compared to the actual. And I'm like, that's sad. Like, why are we under budgeting, for example, PPRT was one of those funds that I came across where it was significantly under budget. There was really kind of nonsensical, the amount that was budgeted, was like 600,000, yet the IML said it's gonna, you know, more than triple over the years. So, but can you just, maybe you can answer me, so when I was like so I just wanna have this not happen next year. I was making inquiries, okay, how much we budget, how much are we? And so, like in November, you know, you told me, oh yeah, we have, I think it was 3.8 million, and okay, so we were way over, but when I pulled up the state, the actual, and I know we get automatic, what do you call it, EFT deposited. We actually, in September, they had deposited 4.4 million, and I'm looking at this in terms of accrual method. And so by year end, by the time we were meeting on December 12th, we actually had 5.5 million, but you all were telling us 3.8 million. And I'm looking at what was deposited from the state. I have the book, the dates, and so for example, did we get a deposit this month for November and December? Like,
Are you, do you want me to respond to
so
that?
for example,
All
if
that?
we're looking at accrual, like we would get in January,
Right.
now,
So-
we should be getting another payment for November, December, correct?
So I dug into this over the last week to better understand it, because PPRT is one thing that is really, really different. So sales taxes, you get 3 months after the actual data. So December just ended, we won't get our December holiday sales taxes until April.
Okay, I'm talking about PPRT.
I know, I'm just saying how different it can be. So in terms of PPRT, the deposit that we got in the end of December represented our payment for October and
But
November.
also that deposit was made on December.
Clear.
No, sorry, but he told me it
No,
was made on December.
we have another meeting that,
I know,
you're
but
on
this
the
was a
agenda
serious
for-
problem. But this was a serious problem.
that started 10 minutes
You
ago.
told me on December 6th, we got it yesterday, I kept
You were
asking.
being on the
And
school,
I
maybe,
have
maybe,
it
maybe,
from the state.
Okay, I
It
think
was
bottom
on
line,
December 8th.
we can improve substantially on.
And we
the
just got
reporting
one
of the
yesterday
board
for $750,000 before December. We got it on Monday.
And line item forecast.
But these numbers need to be more transparent.
So if everyone could just read, I can try to continue to make progress on all these sections. I think we originally said we were gonna break these up by group. If people wanna talk about this over the next couple of weeks, but I think to really make progress, we need to divide up into these 5 sections, and the people that are that were nominated to lead these sections.
They're the same
try to
five,
make
right?
progress. Yes, it's the
Yeah.
same as what it was. So, happy to work across all of these with you guys. And Claire, we talked about, we're trying to lock in, what are these 100% payments
Right.
for the pensions? We'll get Foster and Foster tell us what that is, and that will allow us to say.
Right, when I asked Foster to give us, also 105%, I mean, we should,
Okay.
this is what we
But
want to do, I mean, we should know those
Okay.
things, like, also.
So, I think that's, if everyone can continue to go through this, I'm happy to talk about
Hand
the,
up, I don't know what you.
ready to talk about it, and Hitesh needs to nominate a person, that is sort of the companion across these 5 work streams, okay? So, with that, I guess we are adjourned.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, everybody.